everyone, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cincinnati Zoo Tales.
We're excited to introduce our guest today. Colleen Adams is here from the interpretive department, and she specifically works a lot or closely with our tamandua. So we're going to talk a lot about tamanduas today, but we just wanted to say thanks for being here and hear what you have to say about yourself and how you got started in this business first.
Wow, that is a really open-ended
It
prompt.
really is.
Well, talk about anything, basically.
Yeah.
Will do. I could talk forever. First off, thanks for having me on the podcast. Really excited to be here. So how I got my start in zookeeping, like most zookeepers, I'll give you the cliche. I've loved animals my whole life. Always knew I wanted to do something with animals. However, I didn't really think of zookeeping as like a real profession. I thought of zookeeping as more of like a fairy tale, Man in the Yellow Hat from Curious George. I didn't really think of that being a real thing people did, so I thought veterinary school would be my only option if I wanted to work with animals. Really lucky that on a college visit I learned that there were zoo programs out there. So I went to Malone University and I got a degree in zoo and wildlife biology, and I got a minor in psychology, which was heavily focused on animal psychology.
That's fun.
Very cool, yeah.
And I will say that I personally feel like the psychology minor has come in more handy than my major, with all of the training we do and behavioral observations and things like that. After college, during college, I did a handful of internships. Detroit Zoo. I worked at an exotic animal rescue facility for abandoned pets that people should not have. I worked also at a wildlife sanctuary for native animals, so did things
with a really similar background.
Do we?
Yeah.
Maybe we should compare after this. Opossums and snapping turtles and things like that. And then I worked at the Columbus Zoo, the Akron Zoo, and I did about 6 months at a farm rescue that also had a handful of exotic animals. They had a mob of 30 wallabies, very randomly. People think they make good lawn ornaments. They don't, so they would surrender them to this farm, and the mob just kept growing. So I worked there for a while.
Huh.
And
well,
then,
that helps your experience now, right?
Yes,
that's
it does. Yes, it does. Then from there, I remember standing outside in the driveway. I got the call that I got the job at the Cincinnati Zoo with our interpretive department, which leads us to now.
And when did you start here?
I started here in 2015, September of 2015.
It's been a while now.
Yes.
Everything feels, time is just messed up in my head these days. I don't know how long anything has been. It seems longer or shorter. And so were you working with ambassador animals at Columbus and Akron too? Or so that's what you've always been doing?
Yeah, so I've primarily worked with ambassador animals. I can't believe I left out one of my positions. When I was in school, we had a zoo on campus, the Malone University Serpentarium.
Wow.
So cool. I was the primary keeper for 3 years of a subset of animals of the collection. So that was really cool. I got paid experience as a keeper for 3 years, right next to the chem lab. There was where the animals were kept. So that was really cool. Between classes, I could run in and take care of the animals and clock my time. But those are ambassador animals as well, because we would use them for job fairs and things like that. And then, Columbus Zoo, I worked with in their ambassador department doing shows and programs and a lot of meet and greets and random encounters and things. Akron Zoo, I was there in their ambassador department for a year in a temp position. They were working on kind of figuring out what their structure was going to be with their ambassador department, whether they were going to stay part of education or part of the animal department. So I was there at an interim period. So typically it's a 6-month temp position, but I was extended for 12 months just to kind of make that transition easier with only having to have one person in that spot. So, and then here, ambassadors.
So you mentioned education. We've said ambassadors and interpretive.
Yes.
Will you describe the difference? There's a small difference in interpretive animals and ambassador animals at a zoo than what, say Mark and I work with. All of the animals here at the zoo are ambassadors for wild species, but what does your department do differently? And just explain a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a really important clarification to make. Sometimes we forget that,
Yeah.
We're just a group of zookeepers talking. So ambassador animals is kind of a fancy way of saying the animals that would be used for presentations, programs, animals that you can get up close and personal with, animals that you might get to have a really unique experience with, where there's no boundaries, no borders. So a lot of times you come to the zoo and you see a lot of our really neat animals like our hippos and our lions, but they're behind behind glass or behind mesh, and that's to keep the animal safe and to keep us safe. But ambassador animals, for the most part, are able to be without a boundary. So if you've ever had a bird fly to your hand, you've ever touched a snake when you were in the gift shop, you've ever been at a school program and had a cheetah come out on stage and sit right up on that table without a barrier, that is how we classify an ambassador animal.
And what is it that kind of, you've had so much experience with ambassador animals, what is it that pulls you to ambassador animals? Is it the fact that you can work with them free contact and you can really build a close relationship? Is it also like the education aspect to it? I imagine is very rewarding as well.
Yeah, so I think it's literally both of those. So thanks for answering your own question.
No problem.
There is something pretty amazing about being able to be free contact with my animals. It obviously requires that I'm kind of like on my A game all the time, right? Because just because I can be free contact with these animals doesn't mean that there are never dangers, right?
Sure.
Doesn't mean that I don't have to be careful or that they're just like pets. So I want to be really clear about that. The tamanduas that we'll talk about a little bit later are some of the strongest animals for their body size of anything I've ever encountered, and they have claws that are as long as our pointer fingers. So we still have to be really careful, but I can also still carry them around because of our relationship and whatnot. And then, yes, the other part would be education. There is something pretty amazing being the person that facilitates the moment that someone gets to experience something with an animal they never dreamt they could before. And obviously, you guys get to do that as well all the time, especially with your hippos and things. I just do it in a slightly different way, being free contact. So flying our Lady Ross's Turaco Zulu through the bamboo forest and having her swoop over people's heads is just a really neat experience, and watching people's faces light up and, say, this is my new favorite animal.
Yeah, I'm sure they go home and talk about that for years.
Yes.
Like,
For sure.
it's a moment they won't
It's so
forget.
rewarding.
And I feel like for you guys, too, it's got to be really rewarding because a lot of the animals that you work with, people may have never seen one before, or they may never even heard of. Like, I'm sure most of the visitors we have that see the Turaco doesn't know what one is, and then you see it and you're like, man, these are inspiring, beautiful birds. It's got to be really rewarding.
Yeah, our previous head keeper used to refer to Zulu as everyone's favorite animal that they didn't know existed.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it's just different when you get to see them doing what they do best, flying or like a natural behavior, and up close and personal versus seeing them out in like a bird aviary. You may not connect with that one bird or that even notice it, but if they're flying over and you don't expect an animal to be free in the zoo,
Right.
like it definitely like makes a lasting memory, I feel like. So that's really cool you get to do that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Do you have any, I'm sure the tamanduas are a huge favorite for you. Do you have any other animals that are specifically rewarding that you work with?
Yeah, so I just mentioned Zulu, Lady Ross's Turaco. She'd be way high on my list. I hand raised her from a little chick. And then Lucille, the bearcat, or binturong, to give you the technical name. I bottle raised her from 5 weeks old, so she's really special to me as well. She's the ambassador for the University of Cincinnati. And Frankie, our bat-eared fox, is one who's really special to me. She is probably one of the most intelligent animals that I've ever worked with, so she's really rewarding because training her is just really a challenge, but in the best way. So she picks up on things so fast that I'm constantly having to come up with new behaviors for her. At the time of this recording, I believe she's at like 32 different trained behaviors.
That's impressive.
And those are specific like on-cue behaviors, right? Those aren't just that she knows how to shift or run outside when she's told or those kinds of things. These are like, handshake and listen and dig and stuff like that. So those would be some of my very favorites. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone.
That's awesome. I remember when Lucille was young and you guys were kind of trying to habituate her to interacting with the public. So like some of the keeper staff got to go in from different departments and meet her, and that was really rewarding. Just to get to see her for one day was awesome.
Yeah, she was I'm sure she still is so cute, but she was tiny when we got to interact with her.
Yes.
And she was so fun.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
So, on average, how many animals are you working with in a day? Because you guys have a large collection, but you have different spaces where they live. So, are you going back and forth, or explain to the listeners kind of what your day looks like?
Yeah, so we've got about 140 animals, I believe, at the time of this recording, in interpretive, and we have 4 separate buildings. Then we also have our rainforest that houses our sloth, so it's not really a whole other, building worth of animals. And every morning our team meets and we set up who's doing what routine for the day. So every day I'm working in a different building with a different set of animals. I want to say we've got like 22 runs or so in the department, somewhere around there. Someone on my team's going to count that now that I said that. And we sign up for a couple, and whatever animals are on that run is kind of the ones that you're working with. So the Animal Ambassador Center in the Children's Zoo is the building that I am the primary keeper on. So I'm responsible for like the weekly tasks, monthly tasks, keeping it running, just really having eyes on the building, but I only have to work in there 1 to 2 times a week. So the other days of the week I might be up at our education center, which is connected to our rainforest. So I could work with anything from our sloth to our anteaters to reptiles, amphibians, birds. And then also we all train animals in all the different buildings. So today I've already been to almost every single place that I could possibly go in interpretive, just to make sure I get all my training sessions in.
That sounds time consuming.
Yeah. It is.
That would be hard.
I'm sure you're getting your steps into walking from building to building across the park.
But, you've mentioned some of your favorites, and people have grown to love some of these animals you've mentioned. And Rico is a part of your department. Yes. He's very well loved. But a lot of times, these animals are actually behind the scenes, and people have a hard time seeing them. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you could tell guests, like the best way to get the most out of their experience at the zoo, like to see some of these animals? Do you guys have specific times, or is it all happenstance?
It's mostly happenstance, sadly, but we are moving towards some more structured ideas for next summer, whether that be just checking a sandwich board that's sitting outside the AAC that says, we'll be taking Zulu to the bamboo forest at 1 p.m., or there's a space called the Mahali, which is kind of by, like, the Treetops building, by where the flamingos used to be, and, like, lion is kind of the best way for me to describe it. And we sometimes take animals there. It is my dream one day to have a tamandua climb a tree somewhere in the park. So once we designate what the best tree will be, I'm sure it'll have some sort of signage or something. And so yeah, we're trying to get something a little bit more structured so people can see these animals that they fall in love with on social media, and then they drive from all over, fly from all over to see, and then they can't. So
it is tough, though. It is very cool when you aren't expecting it. It makes it that much more magical. But like, I totally get that people want to be able to see them too. So there's like a little give and take with that, where no, you can't always see them, and you may or may not see them. But sometimes they're big requests, like for the sloths and Rico, and they have certain areas that you can see them. But
one little hint, or one little tip I should say, is if you're wanting to see any of the ambassador animals that are on exhibit, like Rico or Isla tamandua, Lucille bearcat, try to come near the end of the day when we're feeding them out dinner, because they're usually waiting for their dinner, and 9 times out of 10 they will come down and get their food. And Rico is especially cute to watch eating because he holds his food with his little front hands. So that would be my insider tip.
I'm sure everyone will love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. You did mention the tamandua, though. I do want to hear all about our tamanduas that we have here at the zoo. Would you start, though, by just describing what exactly a tamandua is, where they're found, what they eat?
Yeah. So a tamandua is a lesser anteater, not because they're any less awesome, but because they are lesser in size than a giant anteater. And I have said that 9,000 times at this point in my career. But really and truly, they are just as amazing as a giant anteater. So when people think anteater, they typically think giant anteater. They think the big black, gray, and white anteaters that are 5 to 6 feet long, walk on the ground. A lot of people don't know that there are other anteater species like the silky anteater or like the tamandua. And a tamandua is full grown, somewhere between 5 kilograms and like 9 kilograms, depending on the exact individual. Sorry, it's in kilograms. That's what we weigh everything in. And they're tree climbing animals, so they are arboreal. So they have really amazing adaptations that allow them to move around in the trees really effectively and safely. So they have those long claws that I mentioned a little while back that are about as long as my pointer finger on their front feet. And then their back feet also have some pretty long hooked claws as well that help them hold on to the tree. And then they have a prehensile tail. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term prehensile, that just means that it is essentially like a limb. So they can use that tail to grab onto things. It's very muscular. So it makes life in the trees a lot easier. And then as far as what they eat, I'm hoping that most of you listeners can guess what an anteater eats. But just in case, I'll tell you, they eat ants primarily, but they also really like termites and any fruits that they might come upon. And then if they can safely ever get honey, they've been known to snack on some honey. So very often they might find some rotted, slightly rotted bananas or overripe oranges or things on the ground, and they would go for those. However, tamanduas also really like savory foods. So Isla's favorite food is chicken-flavored baby food. And a lot of tamanduas are known to go nuts for ketchup, vinegar. Yeah, they like a lot of savory foods.
Interesting. Do we know what would be something like that in the wild that they would have, like, get a taste for that? Or
so, I don't know how true this is, and I'm prefacing with that. But it is said that when ants give off a chemical that smells similar to stinky feet, which smells similar to cheese. So
what?
I don't know how accurate any of that is, but that is what I sometimes say on programs, because the tamanduas are insanely into our feet when we go on walks. And stinky feet sometimes does smell like stinky cheese.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Never would have made that connection. I never would have.
Did you mention where they're from? Where they can be found?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't.
No, it's okay.
Central and South America, and really all over both. I mean, their range is massive.
Are they endangered?
They are not currently endangered. Great. However, a population census hasn't been done in a really long time on tamanduas. They're also very, very elusive. They're hard to see. They're nocturnal. I went to Costa Rica twice, and I saw one tamandua for approximately 2.5 seconds crossing a street. Since they're nocturnal and they're solitary and they live in the trees, they can be really hard to find. I was talking to a researcher a couple years ago who went down somewhere in South America to study tamanduas, and I believe in her whole 3 years there, she only saw like 3 or 4 individuals total.
Man.
Yeah.
Researchers are so dedicated.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like all that time and not having that reward of seeing the animals very often? Right. Oh my gosh. So tell us about the tamanduas we have here.
Yeah, so here at the zoo we have Isla, and she is our female. Isla, I believe at the time of this recording, is like 7 years old. With 140 animals, sometimes I don't always remember my ages.
Oh, we don't either.
We're right there with you.
We only have like 40 animals.
Like 7. And then we have Salvador, who I know is the same age as Isla. So whatever she is, he is as well. Salvador is her boyfriend, and they have had... Isla has had 5 pregnancies, so they've made 5 babies at this point. And before Salvador, Isla actually had another boyfriend here at the zoo named Tovar. For any of our listeners who might remember Tovar way back, and he was way bigger, way beefier. He had way darker coloring than Salvador does. He was a really neat guy, but the two couldn't figure out how to make babies, so he went on to another facility to get a new girlfriend. And Salvador came in, and the two hit it off instantly, and have made lots of babies since then.
Huh, that's amazing that they just hit it off better.
Oh my gosh.
It makes sense. But...
First intro. She got pregnant at the first intro.
Wow.
No way.
Yes, she did.
And she's currently pregnant right now.
Yes, she is currently pregnant. We are on day 6 of birth watch right now.
So you mentioned briefly, we've heard the birth watch has started, but that we may not have a baby until the end of January. So explain that. Like, do we not know their gestation? Is it like... What is that about?
Yeah, so tamandua's gestation is typically 130 to 190 days, which is a massive window, right? Yeah. Imagine telling a pregnant woman that you could go anytime in these 2 months. We have no idea when to expect it.
That would be awful.
Yeah, and that's because tamanduas have given birth at all points in that 130 to 190. There's a zoo in Indiana that just had a baby born at day 186. Isla's given birth at day 161, day 169. She also gave birth at day 127, but unfortunately that pup didn't make it, probably because it was a little too young. So, yeah, the birth window is just massive. And so it's a waiting game for a full 2 months.
I wonder what that's about, because it's not like it's super long, so 2 months is a big difference in... Wow. Okay, and they're small animals. But...
Do you guys have a pool going on? I'm guessing when the baby's going to be born.
We have a baby pool going on. So,
what's your guess?
My guess is New Year's Day at 7:30 p.m.
Ooh, that'll be fun. New Year's baby.
I was say that'd be a fun time for a baby.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So it's December 5th right now, but in the next 2 months, there should hopefully be a new tamandua baby here. And how long will that baby nurse and stay with mom and all of that?
Yeah, so if it's a female, baby can stay with mom for about a year. If it's a male, we'll probably start separating around 6 months and have that finished by 7 months, because we don't want any mom and son babies popping out. And they usually they'll nurse up to like 5 months. However, they start weaning at like 3 months. So if you guys are visiting the zoo and you see them over in the Animal Ambassador Center, you might be able to see baby start trying some of mom's food at 3 months old. However, they'll still get the majority of, the nutrients from mom's milk at that point. And then weaning goes pretty fast for tamandua. And eventually nursing just becomes a comfort thing where you don't even think mom's probably producing anything. Baby's just suckling because they're very bonded.
Thinking of what a tamandua looks like with this really long snout, like I can't even picture what nursing looks like, but it must be interesting. Hopefully you guys will catch it on video and you can share it. But yeah, like how does the babies cling to their mothers, right? So they hold on like a tamandua would hang onto a tree. And then are they like upside down on the mom's stomach? How does that work?
So it's really precious when they nurse. A lot of times mom either lays over them, so they'll be laying on their back and mom will lay over them. Or mom might be laying kind of on her back and literally cradling baby a little bit like a human. So
she's not like hanging in a tree and the baby's hanging onto her. They're like
not as often.
Solid.
They're more usually like most of the time they go back to their nest. We don't know so much about in the wild because they're so elusive. So we can say for certain that in zoos and things that they nurse that way in their nest. So I have a lot of pictures and videos and things of their first baby, Isla, and Salvador's first baby, Manny, nursing. And to answer your question, Jenna, a little bit ago about how in the world do they nurse with that long tongue, they actually extend the tongue fully out and it flops to the side. And then they'll latch up to the nipple. So it's really, really cute to see the tongue just hanging out to the side.
It makes it even cuter.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh
yes. So if you've ever seen one of our videos of the tamanduas yawning or something, you can get a feel for just how long that tongue is and how silly it would look flopping out to the side.
How long is their tongue?
12 to 16 inches
wow.
in an adult.
That's so long.
That's
you compare
incredible.
that to a giraffe.
Yeah, I was say about the size of a giraffe.
For the size
tongue.
of the giraffe versus the size of tamandua to have a similarly length tongue. That's crazy.
And for Isla and Salvador, obviously in the wild they're going to be eating mostly ants, but I'm sure we don't have enough ants to keep them fed here. What are they going to be eating on a day-to-day basis?
That's a great question. So in zoos, we formulate a lot of our diets, based on what we can get our hands on. So like you said, we might not be able to have a lot of ants around here, but we can make pellets like dog food that contain all of the nutrients that animal group might need. So tamanduas are what we call insectivores because they eat primarily insects. So there's a pellet that is formulated for insect-eating animals. So it has a lot of the nutrients that they would find in ants and termites and things. So we take that insectivore and we soak it overnight, and then we put it in a blender and we add some water. Sometimes for Isla we add some vinegar. Sometimes we add some oil to make sure that their skin doesn't get itchy because they're used to really humid places and it gets very dry here. And we might add some fruit like orange, banana, things like that. And then we make it into a slurry. It should be like runny pudding. That's the perfect consistency of a tamandua slurry. And then we like to put it in puzzle feeders and things. We try not to feed them in just a normal bowl to simulate what it would be like for their tongues to be going in anthills and things. So we use a lot of just like dog and cat puzzle feeders. So their tongue has to kind of go every which way to clean out the food.
Do you need to do the slurry? Like with the little pellets, they wouldn't want it that way, or is it difficult for them to eat? Or
yeah, I think there might be some people who have had success with not soaking it, but for the most part, everybody makes a slurry for their tamanduas. They also don't have teeth, so they can't chew the pellets, so it's much easier for them to just lap it up.
That makes sense.
They also can't really open their mouth any further than might the width of my pinky. So even eating something like a cricket can be difficult. So if we add crickets to their diet, we typically put them in the slurry and we blend those up. They do lap up mealworms and waxworms pretty well, though.
Okay. Have you ever seen one of them? They go out for walks, which you can talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen them go for ants, or insects out on the walk? Really?
Oh yeah, that is my favorite thing when it happens, and it really doesn't happen very often at all. So it's like a treat for me too.
Yeah, for sure.
When it does happen, Isla loves to look for rotted logs or fencing. Sorry, maintenance, and she will start tearing it apart. If she can sense that there's termites or ants in it. So sometimes they'll just rip into a colony, or occasionally she'll just find one in the ground that I don't even see a single ant walking around, and she just makes a beeline for it and rips open the ground, and then the ants go scurrying everywhere. And it's really neat to be able to watch her do exactly as she would be doing in the wild and finding those ants. And it's also really cool to watch all of her adaptations at work. Even just the way her fur is made and how thick it is and how bristly it is, the ants have a really, really hard time getting to her skin, so then she doesn't get bit up by the angry, soldier ants.
That makes sense.
Who are trying to defend the ant hill. And she also is able to close her eyes super, super tight to make sure they don't get into her eyes either. So that's pretty cool to watch. Our previous male, Tovar, used to find ants a lot more than Salvador or Isla, but it is quite a treat when one of the two of them finds something on a walk.
I know they have a keen sense of smell. Is their sense of smell that strong that they can smell ants?
Well, it must be,
That's
especially if they
incredible.
smell the stinky feet.
Yeah. And it's at night, and are ants out at night? I don't know. I mean,
really
they would have to
great
find
question.
them underground, right? So they'd be using only
And under
or-
tree bark.
Okay.
They find a lot. So
That makes-
Isla tries to climb trees around the zoo. Sorry, horticulture. I really don't let her rip into trees, though, because I'm trying to make sure that we keep our trees alive.
Right.
The dirt I don't care so much about, or the rotten fencing, but yeah, she does. She can find them quick on a tree if I let her climb a little bit.
Do you know how their hearing is? Could that be part of it too?
So their hearing is decent. If you look at a tamandua, you'll notice their ears are pretty big and goofy, sticking off the sides of their head. So yeah, their ears are pretty good too, but nothing compared to that sense of smell.
Okay.
That's amazing. I'm impressed by tamanduas. And then they just use those big claws, right, to kind of open up the tree, or in our case, rotted fencing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they use those claws. They are, those claws are so strong they can rip open a termite mound. So if you know, a termite mound is like a hunk of cement, and they can rip that right open. So they are just so strong, and the claws are so long that they have to walk on the sides of their feet to make sure that they don't puncture their own paw pads when they're walking, and to keep them nice and sharp. So that if they walked on them, they would wear them down, being as long as they are. And they also have super, super padded front hands, and that is to help them in case they do ever make a fist and go to puncture themselves. They've got a lot of protection there. And then also, just as they're ripping into things, it provides a lot of protection. Imagine if you were trying to rip through cement, you'd probably scuff up your palms real good. So they've got just tons of padding on their hands.
Huh. So do they come to the ground often? Like, we know a sloth hardly ever leaves the tree, but how often are tamanduas coming down to the ground?
So tamanduas come to the ground an okay amount, I would say, because they'll come down to the ground and they often walk a certain route. Like, they memorize their routes, and so they'll walk those same routes. Because, again, it's said, I don't know how well this has been studied, that a tamandua can kind of remember where all their different anthills are, because they never want to eat an anthill to totally decimate that anthill's population, or they're decimating their own food source that they just found. So it's said that they'll eat just enough that the anthill can recover itself. And what I heard is that they won't visit that anthill again until they can't smell themselves on it anymore. So tamanduas, as we haven't touched on yet, are incredibly, incredibly smelly, like a skunk times a bajillion.
If you ever walk by the building they live in, you'll catch a whiff.
You can
Yes.
smell it.
Like,
yeah.
here in the zoo,
Yes.
it's one, like, elephants have a pungent smell that sticks with you, but it's not necessarily as hard on the nose, I would say. Same with hippos, same with giraffe. Like, our buildings, we work those areas when we come home and we smell like it. But I don't think you walk by hippos and smell a smell often, unless they've just...
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you can walk by the Ambassador Center or you know, we have different buildings, Africa's area, but... And then plus a binturong and a porcupine, you could definitely catch a smell.
So
from some of the smallest animals.
So it's, you know, they're able to use that strong smell or strong scent for multiple things, and one of those things is making sure that they have enough food left over for later. So as soon as they can't smell themselves on that anthill again, then they will revisit that anthill, and then they can eat from it again.
That's fascinating. I wonder how they know and how they can tell. And animals are incredible. Are they solitary then?
They are. Okay. Yeah, they're solitary. And to finish answering your question about coming to the ground, before we would have said, you know, they come down to go to the bathroom, like sloths do, you know, shimmy down the tree and poop and go back up. However, I'm going to question that, because we have a tamandua who likes to poop from the ceiling, and it will just splat to the ground. He does not care. So that would tell me that in the wild, there's probably tamanduas that you just need to watch your head if you're ever walking through the rainforest. But a lot of times tamanduas do actually come down and find a body of water, and they will go to the bathroom in the body of water.
Okay.
It's believed that the function of that is probably so that it can hide the scent, right? You know, from predators or whatever. So our tamanduas actually both have, we call them their toilets. So they have tubs of water that they will go to the bathroom in pretty religiously, which makes cleaning up a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. You don't have to go searching for it.
Right.
I did not know that at all.
What predators might they face in the wild?
Something like a harpy eagle or an ocelot.
Okay.
A harpy eagle can pluck a tamandua out of a tree, and an ocelot. But other than that, they don't really have a whole lot of predators. Humans, I would say, you know, are probably the biggest threat. So there's a lot of myths around tamanduas that make people really afraid of them.
Oh, I haven't heard any of that.
Yeah, so a lot of people believe that tamanduas are evil by nature. They believe that they will, you know, kill people's dogs, people's pets. It's also said that, you know, a tamandua might come in your house during the night and eat your brains out your ears and things like that. So it's really important. Right now, a lot of education is being done in their natural habitats with the people that actually live with tamanduas, explaining that, you know, all of these are actually myths. Tamanduas are great. They serve a really important role in the ecosystem, you know, of literally just keeping ant populations at bay with how many ants and things there are.
I wonder how those got started, because they don't have teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they have those claws, but they would have no reason to go into someone's house or, you know, like, I wonder how those stories
I think
get started.
a lot of it stemmed from how elusive they are. So people,
just, the unknown.
Yeah, people that live near tamanduas still may have never seen a tamandua because they're so elusive, and you can smell them and know they were there, but never have seen one.
And you probably hear stories
and they're strong, and if you've ever watched one rip open a fence, I think all those things together probably just has created a narrative around them. So,
wow. You did mention they're solitary. What does that process look like for you guys when you introduce, like, Salvador and Isla to breed? Like, is that a very meticulous process? Do they take to each other really easy? What's that like for you guys?
Yeah, so it is definitely a super meticulous process. So I track Isla's estrus cycle pretty religiously, so I can tell based on several behaviors that she might exhibit and also physiological changes in her body. So a really neat one is Isla's eyes will secrete a milk-like substance. Actually, it looks more like Elmer's glue than milk.
Wow.
And it looks like she's crying Elmer's glue. And she only does this when she's feeling particularly receptive to a male. Well, since I work with both the tamanduas on a daily basis, I sometimes, you know, if I want to test where she is in her cycle, I can go hang out with Salvador first, then go see Isla. And if her eyes milk, that's one of the indicators that I can use. However, they also might milk at other times of the month, so I don't use that as the sole indicator. Tamanduas also bleed regularly, like you know, humans do. It's not actually considered menstruation. there's a whole scientific thing behind that, but we do track her bleeding, and then you count out X amount of days past bleeding to determine when she's probably the most receptive. Then if the behaviors line up on top of that, we'll put them together. And Isla is very, very communicative with us if she's not having it. If maybe I put them together a day too early, she's really clear about it, so she'll growl at him and try to get away from him, and then we keep those intros super short, right? They're just informational, and then we'll try again the next day, and then every day she gets more and more receptive just because we're getting further, into that cycle. And eventually it just turns into a big wrestling match, and they play and play and play and play, occasionally stop, try to make a baby, and play and play and play, and they will play all day. They roll around and wrestle and pounce on each other, and it's pretty adorable to watch. And then as she starts coming out of that, period in her cycle, she starts growling again. She doesn't want anything to do with him. She'll hang on the door and be like, "Can you please take me home?" So yeah, it's a pretty meticulous process.
I've not heard a tamandua growl, but I imagine it's adorable.
Yeah. So tamanduas don't really make many noises at all, really. Babies do this very strange, shrieky scream for their mom. It's really cute. It sounds kind of like a bird. I don't know, like Kevin from Up or something would make. Like it's a screech. And then they will growl. And they also do this kind of like hollow whistle through their nose, which it looks like a flute, so it makes sense. A lot of us tamandua keepers refer to it as like nose talking. It's just what we've coined the term. So they'll do that sometimes, primarily when they really can smell each other. They'll start doing this like nose whistle, but I don't hear it most of the time other than that.
A nose whistle.
I've never heard of that. I've never even heard of that before. I didn't know that was a thing.
Is it a happy sound, like they want to get to each other, or like you're too close, go away?
The whistling is usually like, I'm very, very curious. Just imagine like the most curious, anticipatory sound.
Okay.
The growling is definitely get
obvious
away from me. Yeah, but Salvador is the picture of a gentleman. I always say that we should like use him to teach like consent classes and things, because he literally will he'll just follow her around very slowly. He's very like kind and patient with her. Literally he will just like touch her on the back, and if she turns and growls, it's like he just takes a couple steps back and it's like, okay, we'll try again in a bit, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe never, whatever works for you.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask, like, is it hard to separate them when she's ready to be done? But it sounds like he
is incredible. With Tovar, our previous male, he would latch on to Isla, and it was very difficult to get them apart. So it was really opportunistic, right? It would be she finally gets away from him, and then we would run in and grab her. And since we can be hands-on with them, even in that moment, we can safely go in and get them and put them in a crate and take them home. We try to introduce them in a neutral space so that it's not he's coming into her house and stressing her out, or she's going to a place that only smells like him. So we try to do it in a neutral space. But yes, as soon as they're done and they've hung out for several hours, they'll just be wandering around. They sometimes will eat dinner together, and then we just go in and get her and put her home, and they both go to bed. So
nice little date.
Yes, they make it pretty easy, honestly, for us.
So you said an adult is between like 5 and 10 kilograms, which is close to like what,
10 to 20
10
pounds.
to 20
Yeah,
pounds.
something
Yeah.
like that.
So how big is a pup? Is that what a baby's called? Mm-hmm. A pup. How much does a pup weigh when they're born usually?
Like 300 grams.
Wow. So 500 grams ish is a pound, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So less than a pound.
Yeah.
And how long is their little tail?
It's pretty long. It's like as long as their body. Let's see.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think that is?
Like 8 inches?
Yeah, probably somewhere around there.
Wow, that's bigger than I expected.
It's long, and since they're so tiny, it's like a noodle, and it'll wrap around your finger. It's all muscular. Their claws also harden pretty much right away when they're born. So if you ever are so fortunate to be able to like weigh a baby tamandua or something, those claws that I talked about the adults having, babies have, and they're the same size proportionally to that baby, so they're huge. But but they're tiny, brand new, never scratched anything claws. So they are like little sewing needle X-Acto blades. Yes, they can just latch on, but it helps them hold on to mom and ride around the rainforest without falling off and falling way, out of the trees to the ground. So, yeah.
I know they latch onto their moms. Do they latch onto her back or to her belly?
So they latch on like to the base of her tail mostly. Okay. And they have their arms up and over like her back legs. Oh, okay. For the most part, they might also climb up higher on her back, but they can really attach securely at the base of the tail because how they can wrap their limbs around her legs. So Isla usually ends up with some scratches on her inner thighs from the claws holding on.
I had no idea they were that sharp.
Yes. Yeah, and they'll also ride on mom till they literally can't anymore. So 5-6 months, I mean, they'll be this almost the same size as mom and still trying to catch a ride.
Lisa's like, get off me.
Yeah, she will. She eventually just starts smacking them. Like, get off of me. You're too big for this.
So I know you guys do a lot of training with all your different animals, but what training do you do with Isla and Salvador, and how did you figure out that she was pregnant?
Yeah, so the primary training that we've done with Isla would be for just like walking around the park and being able to go on programs. So we do a lot of zoo troop programs and a lot of programs in our education center. So Isla is really good at going and meeting people, and she'll just wander around the room, and pre-COVID people could like feed her bugs and things like that. So we just did a lot of like desensitizing her, so taking her to new spaces, seeing how she reacted to different stimuli, making sure that we could always set up an environment in a way where she felt safe, she felt like she had an escape, she understood her crate was a positive place that she could always retreat to, which on walks she does. If she has to pee, she will go back into her crate for privacy, and then she will pee and then go back on the walk. It's pretty cute.
Usually animals don't want to pee in their crate, but she wants their privacy.
She also pees in her bed. Yeah, okay. That's interesting. So you have to change your blankets
so
every
it's a
day.
safe place, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also cute that she needs the privacy to go pee. So yeah, we do that training, and then walking them, that required a lot of training as well, as far as training them to voluntarily accept having a harness put on them. We do harness our tamanduas when we're out on walks for guest safety and tamandua safety, and because they're amazing climbers. So I need to make sure that one doesn't scramble up the wrong tree or into another exhibit or something like that. But we try not to even like use the leash that's attached to the harness. And what I mean by that is we don't do a lot of tugging on our animals. So she is truly trained to follow my feet or another trainer's feet as we're walking along. And if she ever starts to deviate, I just take one of her treat cups or treat tubes and I tap on the ground, and that's her recall, so she knows to then turn and come back to me. So we've done that training, and then some other really amazing training we've done with Isla is her ultrasound training. So you may have seen some really cute pictures or videos on the zoo social media over the years of Isla getting ultrasounds. A lot of animals in zoos are trained to, stand up on their hind legs and put their front legs on, a stand or something so we can access the belly. But Isla is so trusting and has such a relationship with her care staff that we actually just hold her, and she lays on her back and eats out of a treat tube, eats some chicken flavored baby food. Gosh. And the one thing that's really important to Isla, though, is someone has to hold her back feet. So we like to say it's like stirrups at the gynecologist. She always has to have...
She needs that foot support.
She does. If she doesn't have it, her back feet will just slowly reach out into the atmosphere for something until someone puts a pointer finger up. She'll put her little claws over, and then she is so content eating her baby food. So at this point, I want to say probably at least 20 different people have held Isla for ultrasounds. Wow. Which is an amazing testament to her training, right? She doesn't have relationships with all 20 of those people, but she has such a strong history of training with that ultrasound behavior that we can kind of swap people in and out at this point.
Fun.
So that's how we found out she was pregnant.
Yeah, so we got to see images of a baby tamandua.
Yeah.
Which is just adorable. And that, based on you following her cycle and seeing the breeding and everything, that's how you came to this potential due date of the next 2 months.
Yeah, I'm really precise. 2 months.
It's going to be January 1st, remember?
Yes,
Oh.
January 1st.
I hope so.
A little less than a month to go.
Based on her first and second baby, that's somewhere in the middle of them.
Okay.
That's why I chose that date.
Okay.
It's still pretty random.
Well, that's awesome. They sound like amazing animals. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about them or your job in general, or any more hints or tips for our listeners?
Anything else? Well, one cool thing I'll add about the ultrasounds is we've been ultrasounding Isla for so long, and I've been a part of so many that I actually was able to learn how to conduct the ultrasounds myself. So now I can kind of switch out with the vets or whoever is doing, we have members from crew who will do the ultrasounds, and I can kind of switch out with them. So sometimes they'll hold Isla and I'll do the ultrasound.
Which is so funny because they're probably dying to do that,
Yes.
and you're like, I want to do the ultrasound, and you
Yeah.
both have like the coolest jobs, but you want to do each other's.
Yeah, so that's been really neat, and we've gone through a series of different ultrasound machines. So the first machine that we used for several years, I mean, I was blown away by that one. It's the one that I learned on, but it is nothing compared to the ones we're using now. We were able to hear the heartbeat last week for the first time ever.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we can see eye sockets and the liver, and, obviously you can see ribs and spine usually, but we're able to see, the front feet kicking and things like that, the tail. And all the little bones in the tail.
Okay,
so
so is the
that's
tail
amazing.
curled up, or is it straight out and like dangling? How
It
does
is wrapped around the body, and then we've seen it like wrapped around the body, but then also coming to like a candy cane tip. So
Okay.
there's a really cute picture. The bones in the tail make it look like a striped candy cane.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a really
gosh.
cute image.
we need to
see if-
share that on social media.
I know. I'm waiting for PR to put that one out because they have it. We'll see if they'll put it out after this podcast.
Oh, that sounds so
awesome.
fun. Yeah, we've gotten to experience some different ultrasounds with hippos, and the new one, if you're talking about the white one,
The
that
white
Dr.
one.
Barnes
Yes,
has,
it's
yes.
impressive.
that white one is amazing.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Everyone's like, we don't know what they're talking about.
We're geeking out over this machine.
Oh, all right, you ready for some trivia?
I guess as
I
ready
do
as I'm
have
going to
some-
be.
Yeah, I've got some trivia for you guys if you're
Okay.
up for it. All right. Today, it's obviously we were here to talk about tamanduas. It's all about tamandua trivia.
Oh,
I
it's
wanna-
going to be really
where-
embarrassing when
I've
I'm
got-
wrong.
It'll
I've got
be really abstract. What did you come up
just
with
3
now?
questions today,
Okay.
so it's a pretty short set.
Okay.
Question number 1, I'm going to make Jenna start with the answer
Oh.
because Colleen actually mentioned the answer
Oh.
in our
How
discussion.
was I listening? Okay.
How well was Jenna paying attention? We're about to find out. How many teeth does a tamandua have?
Oh, I know this. They have 0.
0 teeth.
Yay.
Oh man, I could have done that one. I would have gotten that right.
Yeah, as Colleen mentioned, they just use those really long tongues to kind of slurp up ants, termites, whatever they're able to find, or what is it? Chicken flavored
Chicken
flavored baby food.
whatever they can find. So.
And then their stomach helps grind the food. They've got a really interesting digestive tract
Oh.
that helps grind up the food.
That makes sense because exoskeletons on insects are not easily
Yeah.
digestible,
They're tough,
and
yeah.
if they're not even chewing it, so
Giant anteaters eat rocks in order to actually be a physical grinder in their digestive tract.
that sounds
Interesting.
horrible.
Yeah.
But wow.
All right, question number 2. How many ants, approximately, does a tamandua eat in a day?
Do you want to try first?
This was
Sure.
a study done by the Smithsonian Zoo
In a day?
in a day.
Hopefully it's the same number that I tell people.
This is a complete guess. 10,000.
10,000.
Girl.
Do you have a guess?
I usually say 9,000.
Yay! Not too far off.
Hey, you guys are both right at
so
it. Yeah.
many ants.
Smithsonian came up with 9,000 ants approximately.
Wonderful.
Give or
I would
take.
also love to know how that study was done.
Same.
How do you facilitate that?
Right.
Or count each ant individually as they
Right.
eat.
Maybe they weighed one ant, and then they put a bucket of ants, and anyways.
They
go
honestly
on.
probably did do something.
Just
like-
weigh 'em?
Probably by
Based
weight,
off
yeah,
weight, yeah,
an
based
average.
off weight. But that's still incredible. They're eating 9,000 ants
Yeah.
a day. Even I know ants are small, but tomatoes aren't that big. I mean,
Right.
it's just a,
Right.
like I said, 10, 15-pound animal. Like,
Yeah.
I guess we
Going
don't
to
know the
town.
volume of 9,000 ants.
Yeah,
now I'm
that's true.
super curious.
Right.
We should ask Insect House.
Right. And there are so many different types of ants. Some are teeny
Right.
tiny.
Right. They probably eat more of those and less of the big fat ones.
yeah. Yeah, especially if they don't have any teeth. They're just... Smaller ones probably go down easier, I'd imagine. But...
I'm imagining little live ants in their digestive system. That's weird to think about.
I didn't think about it that way. But...
Yeah, because they just swallow them right down.
Yeah. They can't die right away, right?
I don't think so.
That's
They probably have some serious
a circle of
gastric
life right
juices
there.
and
Yeah.
things.
Hopefully it's quick.
Yeah. R.I.P. ants.
2 for 2. We're off to a good start. Question number 3. What is a tamandua's last effort in a defense mechanism from a predator?
Do you know it?
I hope
Like,
I'm right.
should I guess? It's before you. Because sometimes our guests have to guess because he asks questions like, how tall is Big Bird? But these are normal
We had
questions.
no Big Bird questions today. No Big Bird.
So you might know all the answers. Okay, I'll guess. Well, I would assume their first defense would be their claws.
Correct.
So would their last defense be like curling up into a ball?
Curling up in a ball. Colleen, do you have any insight?
Well, I was going to guess that their claws were a later defense than their
Oh.
first defense because they will often just try to run away since they're so elusive.
Okay.
I was going to guess claws. Second, they posture up like a ninja and they stand on their hind legs and start slashing.
Oh. So it's run away, then look big and scary, and then use their claws?
That would be my guess.
So the claws and the ninja posturing is definitely like a defense mechanism for them. From what I read, I mean, you're the expert here, so I will trust. I'll defer to your judgment. From what I read, their last defense is going to be to secrete some of that stinky odor from their anal gland. So almost like a skunk. Like,
Okay.
if all else fails, they're just going to try and make themselves stink as much as possible so that the predator, if it does get a hold of them, it might not
Doesn't
want
want
to
to
eat them
eat
if they
them?
smell that bad. Yeah.
You know, I've never experienced it here, and that's probably a good thing.
Yes.
Because you're not a
They
predator,
aren't
right?
threatened.
That means that they're not threatened. Yeah, I've only
And you
seen
don't have to
ours
smell it.
go into ninja pose a handful of times, and it's like if someone drops a broom in the area and they're spooked by it, they might
Yeah.
stand up like a ninja. But it's, I mean, probably less than 10 times ever have I seen that. So
Stand up like a ninja.
it's cute, but then you know they're stressed.
Yeah. That's tough, but I'm glad we got to hear that they do that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
stinky odor, though. They're like
It's
ant-eating skunks, I guess. Yeah.
It's tough.
Do you find it hard to like go in public after work when you work with them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, I don't love to fly after because it kind of smells like weed. I mean, it actually really smells like weed, so I don't love to fly after. My husband won't kiss me when I get home from work until I go shower
Oh
because
my
it's so
gosh.
bad. I don't sit on furniture because the smell will just
It
seep
sticks.
into my
Yeah, it
couch.
sticks
Yeah.
You're
everywhere.
dedicated.
My clothes have to go straight down to the washer or my house will smell like tamandua. I have a certain purse I bring to work
Yeah.
and everything. So, but fun fact, tamanduas actually smell amazing when they're not secreting that smell.
What do they smell like?
Perfume.
Really?
Yeah, it's a wonderful, clean, perfumey smell.
For real, I had no
I'm not
idea.
kidding.
Huh.
Rarely do I get to smell it.
Well, what causes them to smell bad versus smell good? Like, is it all estrus cycle? Is it the
I
males
think it's
only?
just
Is
secreting that smell.
Okay.
Like, I think that's just always covering their natural like fur smell. So if you ever met like a dog or a cat that was just pretty clean and didn't smell dirty or oily, they smell kind of good. So that's like tamandua, but it's actually rather perfumey. And So I'm not really sure what on their body gives that smell. Not everyone has ever even smelled it, even people that take care of tamanduas, because it's very rare that they're
Well, that's what I
not
was wondering.
secreting.
So, yeah, that's what I was wondering, like, why would they not be? But, okay, so I don't really know. It's just random.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I learned a lot
Yeah,
today.
me too. Me
I'm
too.
glad.
I'm right there with
I'm
you.
glad. I hope the listeners have as well.
I'm sure they have. So, you've told us all about what you do in tamanduas, but is there something that I can do? What can I do? What can the listeners do to be better stewards of the earth or just make an impact on tamandua habitat or anything like that?
One of my favorite, really easy things to do in my own house that helps tamanduas, helps hippos, helps everybody because it affects the whole planet is switching from single-use, plastic sandwich bags to multiple-use plastic or multiple-use sandwich bags. So I've got some silicone ones at home. They're really nice because you can freeze them and wash them really well. They go in the dishwasher. I also really love them selfishly because you can use them multiple times, so they're good on my wallet as well as for the environment.
Yeah, definitely. I have some of those too, and you can get like quart-size ones, or like the gallon-size bags, and instead of buying Ziplocs anymore. And yeah, the fact that they can go in the dishwasher. You have to get the silicone like nicer ones. I've gotten some from like Amazon that didn't end up working out very well. So you might have to start with a little bit of an investment at first, but it'll pay off.
It will pay off, and you get to feel good using them because it's one less thing you're throwing in the trash.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I've seen some, I have the ones that have like the slide on top. Is that the kind you have?
Yep.
I don't know if there are any that actually like zip up, like Ziploc bags.
I'm not sure.
But like another option, that's a really good one to not use, obviously single-use plastic in general, but if you're packing your lunch on a daily basis, it's totally worth it to buy these, or even like the beeswax wraps. But I think these reusable bags do a better job at keeping food fresh, right?
Yeah, agreed.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I love it. Anything you can do to cut down on those single-use plastics, every effort counts. Yeah.
Always.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here, Colleen, and telling us about all of your animals, and we cannot wait. Wait, let's make a guess.
Yes,
when do you
please
think?
guess on the air.
Okay, just based off the fact that she said the tail in the ultrasound looked like a candy cane, I'm going to go Christmas baby.
Oh,
love it.
that's
Christmas
fun.
baby.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
December 25th.
Gosh, now I mean, that's a good reason. I don't have any reasons. Let's see. I'm going to guess, I'm trying to think if there's like a significant date for me coming up. I'm going to say January 3rd just because. Absolutely no reason.
I believe that's Isla's birthday.
Oh, perfect!
No way.
I hope it is.
I
hope
believe
the
that's
baby
Isla's
comes with
birthday.
that. Awesome. Okay,
Perfect.
well, Mark says December 25th. You say January 1st. I say January 3rd.
Second or the third.
Okay.
I mean, we'll just say the third for the sake of your guess.
Sounds good. My son was born on the 3rd, and Fritz was born on the 3rd. Obviously not the same month or year, but we'll see if baby Tamandua is born on the 3rd.
Yes.
That'll be
That'd be
fun.
awesome. Yeah, keep following the zoo social media page. I'm sure you'll find updates about Isla as she's going through the pregnancy, maybe a couple ultrasound images, and definitely once this baby comes, we'll find out. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. There'll be so many pictures and videos of this baby.
Oh, we can't wait. All right, well, have a great day. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Thank you all.